Hey guys, it's Courtney from the Ivy League, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to answer select all the apply questions. And these are something that everyone hates to answer, but everybody has to do it. If you're in nursing school, you have to do it. You're probably going to have to do it on the NCLEX, especially if you get the upper level questions. So I'm just going to go through how I answer them, and I'm actually going to pull up some notes that I made here. So for select all that apply questions, I'm going to put a sample of a select all that apply question up right now so that you guys can see, for anyone who hasn't had one yet, who has not started a nursing program. It'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. There's the question, and then underneath of that there may be 5-6 options, and you have to select all that apply, which means that at least 2 of those, according to the NCSBN, which is the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, that at least, and the NCLEX, that at least 2 of those options will apply. So you know there's going to be at least 2 answers. And I have never seen a question before that will say choose 3 options or choose 4 options, to give you an idea of how many to look for. It's basically figure it out on your own. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I figure them out. So basically for this portion of the test, I get a couple things out and put them on my desk and have them ready to go, just because just being organized before you have to answer the questions, and you make sure you have everything that you need that I'm going to talk about here. Another thing about these questions is to not read too much into it. Go by what's there, your knowledge of what's going on, and that's it. Don't read too much. Well, if the patient has this, then there's a chance she might have this. Just go by what is written down there. So how do I answer these? First, I start out, I read the question through once, just the question. I don't look at the answers yet. So if you have to cover it up with your paper, if you have to fold your paper up and crease it so it doesn't fold back and you don't see any of the answers, then that's fine, do that. I have done that before, but usually I just cover it up with my hand, just like that. So you want to identify any potential distractors in there, or extremes, absolutes, or important information. So an example of a distractor would be something that has absolutely nothing to do with the question. It's something thrown in to throw you off. An example would be a patient with CF is in the hospital, and then they would throw in something completely unrelated to the answer that they're looking for to kind of trip you up a little bit. So what I do for those is I have a pen sitting up above my desk, strike through it. You don't need it. The next thing that I do is identify any absolutes or extremes. So absolutes or extremes are going to be things that either close your question or open your question, as far as like closed ending or open ending. So closed-ended words: all, always, every, must, none, never. Open-ended ones are may, usually, normally, commonly, or generally. So another one that I see a lot is questions about teaching, and one of them, just for an example, would be which of the following indicates a need for further education. So for these portions of the question, I always underline them because it means that they're looking for something very specific, and that very specific thing is going to be the key to answering the question. So those I underline. I underline any absolutes, extremes, and little keys like further or teaching has been effective, so I'll underline effective just so I remember what I'm looking for down at the bottom. Any important information, like any assessment information or diagnoses or anything that's going to be important to answering the question, I'll have my highlighter at the top. I'll just highlight that just through so I know that that's important when I read it. Because the next step is to reread the question and really try to understand what it is that they're looking for. Again, you still covered up the answers, but you're going to read through the important things that you need. What are they trying to convey in this question? What do they want from you? So once I've reread the question, having highlighted it, underlined, gotten rid of any impertinent information, then I start to pull my paper down and look at the answers one by one. And when you look at answers for select all that apply, it either applies or it doesn't. It's a simple yes or no. So if it fits, I mark it with a little check. If it doesn't, I mark through that letter. So I go down the whole list like that, kind of pulling the paper down. I'm not taking in the group as a whole. I'm only looking at that one specific answer. And again, it either applies or it doesn't. So some are so far off that you can mark through them immediately. They're way out on left field and they're not even going to matter, or they're not even going to match up with the question. So those you can go ahead and strike through. And so again, like if you have your letters down the side like you saw in the sample question, and I'll put a little example up here, I'll just put a check next to A if A fits, put a line through B if B doesn't fit, and at the end of that, as you have gone through all 5 or 6 answers or however many you have, you will have gone through and looked at what applies and what doesn't. So that's how I do that. Another thing that I really recommend is to practice. If you have done select all apply questions before, you know that they can be super tricky, but practicing definitely will put you ahead of the game, especially with knowing how to answer them and knowing what you're looking for. So, and one thing that I had a lot of trouble with when I started nursing school was changing my answers. So you notice that I did not say that an eraser was part of my gear that I bring. For a test, I bring a pencil and I take the eraser out, unless we have an essay, which you might need it, but I typically just scribble through whatever. But I don't use an eraser because I was really, really bad about going back and thinking too much into the question, having known, what processes happen with diseases and stuff like that. I would change the answer. I would read way too much into it and go back and start overthinking it way too much. The answers that are there are either going to be yes or no, they're going to apply or they don't. So don't read into it and don't change your answer. Because if you know the material, like I'm sure you will if you've studied, you know it. And your first intuition is usually the right one. So to go back and to overthink it, like maybe you get 4 or 5 questions, afterwards, and you start thinking, well, maybe that wasn't right. It probably was, because you went through it and you looked at each one individually and you marked it. So don't be confident in your choice that you made, because it was probably the right choice. And if it wasn't, you will know for next time what to do, what material to focus on, that kind of stuff. So that's how I study for select all that apply questions. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks for nursing students that helped you with select all that apply questions down below, and make sure you click like and subscribe. Thanks guys, bye.